Welcome back to the Manor. Julian McBain here, and we are back with Personal Finance for Gamers. So a couple of things before we get started. First off, if you're wondering why I'm standing here with no health, it's because apparently when you're falling into Panleon Cave, if you hit one of the side walls just right, it kills you. Which I actually kind of find amusing, but it was kind of really annoying too. So there's that. But today what we're going to be talking about, we're going to be finishing up the budget portion of Personal Finance for Gamers. Of course, there's more detail that can be gone into. I'm sure I will find more topics on budgeting to cover as the time goes on. But for the near future, the basics of budgeting will have been covered by the end of today. Of course, you're going to take this information. I strongly recommend you build a budget. Think about your goals while you're doing that budget, and create one that works for you. And then next episode we'll be getting into credit. I know, I can hear you all going, ugh. I get it. But before we get started, if you're new to the channel, welcome to the Manor. Please take a moment and subscribe down below. We are on the road to 13 million subscribers, one subscription at a time, so make sure you subscribe. Also, please consider going to patreon.com/JulianMcBain if you want to support my work. If you do, you'll get exclusive content. Speaking of which, I still need to upload December's video, which has been done for over a week. So that will be going up probably by Christmas, which is yesterday for you and tomorrow for me. So, okay, let's get started. We've gone through your top line, which is your income. We've gone through your fixed expenses. Now it's time to talk about your mutable expenses. Mutable expenses are those things that you can't necessarily know what they're going to cost from month to month. And there's a good reason for that. Sometimes mutable expenses are things that you don't need all the time. Clothing is a mutable expense. You don't buy clothes every single month, but you might have to buy $200 worth of clothes once or twice a year to replace things that wear out, or work uniforms, all of that stuff. And no, I'm not saying that you all go out and spend $200 at the drop of a hat on clothing. But what I'm saying is, when things wear out, unfortunately, because of the way we purchase things, things all tend to wear out at the same time. You are much more likely to have to go out and buy 3 pair of pants than 1, because they all tend to wear out at around the same time. Not only that, but for more expensive purchases, you're far less likely to just go out and buy it. When it needs to be bought, you'll try to make do as long as you can until you can't anymore, and then you replenish everything you've got. From a budget perspective, that does put a strain on the budget on those months that you do that. But if you plan ahead, perhaps have a special savings account just for those types of expenses, which isn't going to necessarily be easy or practical starting out, but in the long term, it's a good thing to do. You'll be able to cover them without blowing your budget out of the water. So what are mutable expenses broken down? Clothing, eating out or dates, one-time purchases. Computers, for instance, are generally not something you buy month to month, I would hope, but you might buy it once every 4 or 5 years. Toiletries, and I call those a mutable expense because with the exception of toilet paper and toothpaste, you don't know what you're going to need. You don't need a toothbrush every month. And no, a toothbrush is like a $2, well, unless you go to like the really expensive $100 toothbrushes. You can pick up a toothbrush for $5. You can also pick up a $200 toothbrush that, basically is a dentist cleaning your teeth. That's all in that toiletries department. This also includes things like medication. You're not going to buy cold medicine every week or every month, but you might need to buy it a couple times a year. Vicks Vapor Rub, things like that. Entertainment expenses. And it depends on how. By entertainment, I'm not talking about your streaming services or your satellite or cable. I'm talking about going to the movies, which might be classified under dates, but you don't anyway. Going to the movies, going to the theater, even going to like a bar where they're doing a live band, going to the American Legion for the dance. Those are all mutable. You don't necessarily, unless you do it all the time, then you build it into your fixeds, then it'll be a mutable expense. And credit card payments. Now, why are credit card payments a mutable expense? In theory, If you're using your credit card properly, which we will have a video on proper use of credit cards, I'm probably going to have that be a whole video on its own. If you're using your credit card properly, the credit card itself is going to vary from month to month on what you pay. Ideally, you pay it off every month. And if you're in good shape, the way you use a credit card, and again, holy crap, I got a global off of Panleon. That's awesome. A 10-hole ped. Sorry, distractions. I didn't know I could global off these guys. Anyway, so what'll happen is those expenses you put on the credit card, preferably you're using a credit card that earns points. Otherwise, using a credit card to pay for expenses is kind of a dumb idea. But if you're using a credit card to pay for expenses, again, we're going to get into that in the credit card video, which will be coming up probably in the next week, couple of weeks. Then you're going to pay a different amount off every single month. And with luck, you're not paying the minimum on it. And even if you are, that minimum's going to change month after month because it's a percentage of what you owe. I think I calculated it at like 3%. It's a really tiny amount of the credit card because the purpose of a credit card is not to have money on it. And the purpose of a credit card company is when you do keep a lot of money on it, well, to charge you a lot of interest. To disincentivize you from doing that, by the way. Okay. Sometimes you don't have to budget for mutable expenses. That big one-time purchase you have to make every 5 years, you don't really have to budget for that per se. That being said, again, it's smart for you to have an account set aside for unexpected expenses. This is not your bills account. This is not your savings account that you pay yourself first into. This isn't your stocks, and this isn't any of those things. This is an account set up specifically for things you don't expect. For instance, you could be having a great month, everything's going great, and then you lose a tire to a pothole. That's a $500 expense. You don't want to put that on a credit card because the likelihood is you're not going to pay it off next month. But if you've got money set aside in a separate savings for that mutable expense, it will reduce the pain from it for that month, or it might even not make it a non-factor. And then you just have to remember to slowly replenish that account. Occasionally, a lot of things are going to come up at the same time. As an example, this actually happened to me this year. I had to put 4 tires on the car. I needed a mattress pad because my mattress is old. And there was one other thing that came up that was really, what was it? They all came up at like roughly the same time. Oh, my phone expanded. Battery expanded. Right? 3 major expenses all came up within 60 days of each other. Because of strategizing, I was able to absorb 2 without resorting to... Actually, did I get all 3? Yeah, I was able to absorb all 3, but that's all I had left. That drained the mutable expenses account pretty hard. So of course now the goal is to replenish that account, which will happen over the course of the next 6 to 12 months. But that's the purpose of having those accounts, is to prevent you from having to dip into your sacred savings, which is what you're using to save for your future, build that nest egg, and it stops you from having to put things on credit. So, and the best part is, if your mutable expenses don't turn out to be a lot, at some point you can always take a portion of your mutable expense account and put it into your pay yourself first account to build that up. Or if you've got an outstanding debt, this is a strategy that I've used successfully. Have debt, building up the mutable expense account, and the mutable expense account is equal to the debt, pay off the debt. Because that can be classified as mutable expense. And the best part about doing that is, and you might think, well, then you just eliminated your mutable expense account. If something happens next month, you've got to put it on credit. Yes, that is true. But as long as things don't happen, that's a whole bunch of interest you don't have to pay. And this is why Ramsey does it the way he does, where it's like just keep $1,000 and put everything else on debt, because technically speaking, overall you end up paying less in interest. But there's also the threat of, and this is the biggest contention I have with him, there's also the threat of if something happens, it just goes back on debt. Or you're cutting into that $1,000, which is also not good. So, and it's only $1,000. So that's one of those things where use the plan that works for you. These are just different strategies. And just so you're aware, there will be unexpected expenses. That is completely unavoidable. Even if you think that there won't be unexpected expenses, there will be. Because that's the way life works. Things come up. Unfortunately, they tend to come up all at the same time. Murphy's Law. Murphy's kind of an ass. But he tends to visit, and his visits often come when they do come, they tend to come close together. The more prepared you are for it, the less effect it's going to have on you. It's just like ROTC, Sergeant Major used to say, it's better to have and not need than need and not have. That goes with your money too. It's better to have that extra savings and not need it than need it and not have it. And it hurts when you need it. But it hurts more when you need it and you don't have it. So this goes into the whole prior planning prevents piss poor performance metric. The better you manage these finances, the better off your life is going to be. Even if you don't have very much, the better you manage that not very much, the faster you're going to see it grow. So there's that. And that leaves us with the bottom line. The scary part of the budget is always the bottom line. Because the worst feeling in the world is if you get to the bottom line and the number there is negative. Because if you've got a negative number, you've got a problem. And there are only two solutions to a negative bottom line. But let's get into the bottom line first. You take your top line. That's all of your incomes, right? You pay yourself first. You take out all your fixed expenses. You tell your immutable expenses around your fixed expenses. If you can reduce a fixed expense, do so if you're able to without severe inconvenience. You take the top, you subtract the fixeds, you subtract the pay yourself first, you subtract the fixed, you subtract the mutables. That's your bottom line. That bottom line has to be positive. If it's not positive, you have two choices. Pare down on expenses, which can be tough, but you have to do it. Or increase your top line, which often means taking a second job. Those are your options. That bottom line has to be positive. And if it's not positive, if you are in a situation where you simply cannot earn enough, there are programs out there to help you get to the point where you can. No, this is not a program where we judge people on things like SNAP benefits or anything. We're not talking about people who are in dire straits. Okay? We're talking, but even if you are on things like food stamps or whatever the European equivalent of food stamps is, you can use these tools to help manage your budget. You just factor those food stamps in as a form of income until you've overcome the need for them. And no, there is no judgment for people who are on public assistance here. Been there, done that. I've been very clear on that the whole time. But the goal is to make it so you don't need it if you are on public assistance of some sort, the goal is to make it so you don't need to be in the future. That's why we're doing this. Because even when you don't have a lot, if you can budget it well, then you can go in and start building your life. And the thing is that the further you climb, the faster you climb. Something called the Pareto Principle. I've talked about it before. And it has I want to make sure I'm doing this right. And the loop looks like this. I'm trying to get it on the camera. There we go. Right? That's the Pareto distribution. It's a natural law. The more you have, the more you will get. The further you get, the faster you'll grow. You got to start somewhere. And don't be discouraged if you're starting out further down on the totem pole. Or if you make a mistake and wind up further down on the totem pole. And it's easy. Once you start slipping, it works the same way the other direction. The more you slip, the faster you'll slip. Don't let yourself slip. Or if you do slip, catch yourself. Don't just give up. Don't let yourself hit rock bottom. If you make a mistake on your budget, if you spend over budget one month, come back and fix it the next month. Don't just give up on the budget. These things take practice. And you're not going to just have it done overnight. You're not going to figure it out overnight. You're not going to be perfect overnight. It's going to take you years before you can stick to a budget consistently for 12 straight months. In fact, I'm not sure I know anyone who has done it for 12 straight months because things always come up. But the more you stick to it, the better your life will be. The less you'll have to worry about. Because money troubles cause illness. I'm serious. Stress. It causes stress. When you're stressed about money, you're stressed about everything else. Because you're not just worried about the cash. It's not about the money. It's about the roof over your head. It's about the food in your belly and the bellies of your kids. It's about having the lights on. That's why this is important. And that stress can cause things like strokes and heart attacks. So, that's why this is so important. Build a budget. Figure out how to get yourself in the black, because the black is positive, the red is negative. That's how that works. And then stay there. And again, even if you have to use little gimmicks, save a little here, save a little there, earn a little here, earn a little there, do it if it gets you in the mindset. There are hundreds of YouTube videos on mindset. Charisma on Command is a good one. There are hundreds of videos on mindset. Thousands probably. Go look them up. Money strategies. Getting yourself into that mindset. Because without the mindset, it's a whole lot harder. So, I'm going to leave you with that. Conclusion is, budgets are critically important. The bottom line is where it's at. But the top line is what you can affect. So, as you build your budget, there's any number of budgeting tools out there. I recommend you find one. I might even build one myself. I'll let you know if I do. Use those budgeting tools or use an Excel spreadsheet to build it. Be honest with yourself. That's the big thing. The only person that your budget really matters to is you and your family. The bankers don't care. Your boss doesn't care. Your parents might care, but at a certain point they don't. It only matters to you. So don't lie to yourself on it. You got to be honest about what you're spending. You got to be honest about what you're earning. And go through and be willing to do the work. Because once the work is done, life starts to get better. Okay, that's all I got. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Please like, share, and subscribe down below. We are on the road to 13 million subscribers, one subscription at a time, so make sure you subscribe. And as always, I really appreciate everyone's support. Huge shout out to my patrons, as always. We've added Robert J. Thank you for joining as a member. Again, you can go to patreon.com/Julian McBain if you want to become a member. Get that exclusive content. We will see you in the next one.